There's a smell to a hollow in October. Not a bad smell, not exactly. It's just old, like something wet that has been drying for 1,000 years and hasn't quite finished the job yet. Wet limestone, wet root. That particular rot of tulip poplar bark after 3 days of rain. A smell I can only describe as the color dark orange, if that means anything to you. Ash Hollow sits 9 miles off Route 421, up a fire road the county stopped grading around 1987. You take it slow. The ruts'll catch a tire, and there's a drainage wash on the left side that drops 30 feet into a creek bed full of angular chert, the kind of rock that doesn't weather round. It just fractures, smaller and smaller, until it's grit in the clay. I drove up on a Sunday, the 14th of September. The contract came through a forestry subcontractor out of Boone. 30-day engagement. Tend 6 earthen mounds in an active charcoal production site. Simple work, the kind I'd done twice before. Once in Watauga County, once in Unicoi, and it suited me. I am not by nature a man who requires company. The mounds were already stacked when I arrived, 6 of them, arranged in 2 rows of 3 like a sentence with a comma in the middle. Each one roughly 12 feet high and 20 feet across at the base. That slightly irregular shape that good mound work always has. Because you're not building a perfect dome. You're building a breathing thing. You have to leave it room to settle. The wood was black birch, Betula lenta. Dense, fine-grained, the heartwood almost purple in cross-section. Stack it correctly, large rounds at the base, splits radiating outward like wheel spokes, and it will burn 14 days without being fully rebuilt. You just tend it. Watch the smoke. Learn what each color means. White smoke, moisture leaving, good. Yellow smoke, the temperature has climbed too high, the clay is cracking. Move. Slow, deliberate. Blue smoke, that thin thread rising from a vent hole in the late afternoon. That means you're in the middle stage. The wood is converting, giving up its water and lighter gases, condensing into pure carbon. It's a kind of dying. The wood is becoming something else. The clay on these mounds had been applied 2 or 3 days before I arrived. Not cracked yet. Still that dark bruise gray. And when I pressed my palm flat against the nearest one, I could feel the heat beneath it. Steady, slow, like a pulse that had been running a long time. Inside the tool shed, 2 long-handled clay spades, a barrow, a propane lantern, and a logbook for recording mound temperatures and smoke conditions every 4 hours. The logbook was pre-formatted. Pages and pages of identical grids. The entries from the previous tenders stopped on August 19th. The last one, in handwriting that had gotten noticeably smaller over the preceding 2 weeks, read simply, "Blue smoke, northwest vent, saturation nominal." I didn't know what that meant at the time. The fog came up thick each morning from the creek. By 7 o'clock it would be sitting in the hollow like something poured into a bowl, dense, white, slightly luminous, smelling of iron and cold stone and the sweetness of wet black birch bark. The ridgeline disappeared. The sourwood and red maple along the upper slopes went gray, and then gray-white, and then nothing. I was alone in a white room with 6 slow fires. I found a rhythm. Most men do in this kind of work, if they let themselves. Wake, walk, record, tend, sleep a few hours, wake again. The body adjusts. The mind gets quiet, quieter than it gets most other ways. There is a particular satisfaction in this kind of attention. The mounds are patient with you. They don't demand anything sudden. They just ask that you show up every 4 hours and pay attention. And when you do, when you notice that the southeast vent on Mound 1 needs to open 2 fingers wider, or that the clay on the northwest face of Mound 4 has a hairline crack forming along the 3rd course, and you correct it, and the smoke color shifts back toward right. There is a steadiness in that, a sense of things held in balance by careful, repeated work. I understand now why that feeling was useful to someone other than me. It was on the 6th day that I found the hardware. I was digging out a slow clay leak on the northeast face of Mound 2 when my spade hit something that was not rock and was not root. Once, then again, more carefully. I went to my knees and cleared the clay by hand. A cast iron pipe, tainted with a dull black paint gone chalky with age, about 4 inches in diameter. It emerged from beneath the base of the mound and ran horizontally through the earth, heading north toward the limestone cliff that formed the back wall of the site. I followed it. About 40 yards from the mound, the pipe disappeared into the base of the limestone, into a crack mortared over with failing cement and furred with orange-black lichen. At the junction, an iron collar, flanged and bolted, where the cast iron met a second pipe lined with lead. The lining was visible at the joint, thick and gray, because whoever assembled this fitting had not been careful about concealing it. I pressed my hand against the limestone. It was warm from below, from within. A steady, dry heat with no weather in it, traveling up from somewhere much deeper than the hollow floor. Not the warmth of something recently heated. The warmth of something that has been running a long time and will continue running long after anything on the surface is gone. I held my hand there for a while. Then I pulled it away. I went back to my work, resealed the mound 2 crack, made my rounds, ate supper, and sat on the step of the shed watching the fog come in. But I was thinking about that pipe. Lead-line pipes don't filter fuel. They filter things that are chemically aggressive, things that would corrode unprotected metal. The second thing I noticed that same 6th evening was the shape at the edge of Mound 5. The fog was heavy. My lantern lit maybe 10 feet. Beyond that, gray gauze. I was checking the upper vents when I saw a figure standing in the smoke. A vertical shape about the height of a man, but thicker in the trunk. And still, not the stillness of a man waiting, but the stillness of something that does not need to move. I said, "Hello." Nothing. 3 steps toward it and it was gone. Or rather, the smoke shifted and there was no longer a shape in it. I made a note. Possible visual disturbance due to fatigue and smoke density. 7:42 p.m. I saw the shape again at 11 o'clock and at 4 in the morning. I had started calling them the stump men because that is what they resembled. Old hardwood stumps that have been in the ground 20 years, taken on that hunched, organic dignity that wood gets when it's slowly becoming soil. Dense, patient, always in the warmest channels of smoke, always still. I should have left on the 7th day. On the 9th day it rained for 14 hours, cold and gray, without force, just presence. I spent most of it inside the tool shed, running temperature probes, listening to rain on corrugated metal. I was searching the back shelves for a spare probe gasket when I found the second logbook. Behind a false back panel on the lowest shelf. Not well hidden. The panel just didn't sit flush. The logbook was taped to the inside face with old gummed tape that had nearly let go. The cover read, "Project Seepage, Field Documentation, Site AH6, not for distribution." The first thing I understood was the geography. Hand-drawn cross-section maps of the hollow's geology. Ash Hollow sits over a karst formation, limestone riddled with solution channels, the kind of Swiss cheese geology common to the Blue Ridge uplands of Avery County. Below the karst, labeled at approximately 1,400 feet, the Pottsville coal seam. And running upward through the karst voids, a series of arrows labeled seepage vectors, active. The second thing I understood was the substance. The logbook called it the breath of the marrow throughout, always italicized, like a proper name. A subterranean gas, geogenic in origin, produced by anaerobic conversion of deeply sequestered organic material at the formation boundary. Colorless, near odorless at low concentrations, with a faint metallic sweet quality at higher levels, heavier than air. It pooled in basins. It collected in hollows, capable, at sustained exposure above 40 parts per million, of mimicking progressive cognitive decline indistinguishable from early-stage dementia. Confusion, memory fragmentation, the dissolution of sequential time. At 200 parts per million and above, cellular conversion. A marginal note in a second hand read simply, carbon densification of soft tissue. See Appendix C. There was no Appendix C. The third thing I understood was the system. The karst voids were releasing the breath of the marrow in slow pressure events, following solution channels upward and emerging through cracks in the limestone face at the north end of the hollow. The hollow's basin geometry ensured the gas pooled reliably at the bottom. The site had been chosen not for its timber or its clay. It had been chosen because it was a collection basin that needed to be managed. Activated charcoal is among the most efficient filtration media known. A properly maintained earthen mound, burning at the correct temperature, generates a continuous column of self-renewing activated carbon. The lead-lined pipes delivered the breath of the marrow from the limestone face into the base of each burning mound, where the gas was, per the logbook, approximately 94% neutralized before venting upward. Approximately 94%. The remaining 6% was what you breathed standing next to the mounds every 4 hours. The tender was not employed to tend the mounds. The tender was the secondary filter. Page 47. A table. Biological absorption efficiency, series AH subjects. 12 prior tenders listed back to 1971. Name, start date, weekly exposure measurements, biological absorption readings, and an end date for each. And a final column, saturation status. Entries ranged from partial to full to process complete. 3 were marked process complete. Mound 3, the one slightly larger than the others, the one running a few degrees warmer than its probe reading should have produced, had construction dates that corresponded to 2 of those 3 entries. And at the bottom of the table, a new row. My name. Start date, September 14th. Projected saturation date, October 15th. October 15th. I'm telling you this on the evening of October 14th. I know that because the calendar on my phone still functions, even though I stopped trusting my own sense of sequential time around the third week. Days would double back. I'd find myself at a mound I was certain I'd just left, with no memory of the walk between. I'd read entries in my logbook and not recognize that I'd written them, not because the handwriting changed, but because the memory of forming those words was simply gone. Frames removed from a film. The remaining story still seems to flow. You only know something's missing if you already knew what belonged there. The logbook is thick with entries now. 30 days of temperature readings, smoke color assessments, vent adjustments. Every 4 hours, every day. I kept the work up because by a certain point the rhythm of it was the only thing that still felt like solid ground. Possibly because past a certain saturation level I lacked the sequential capacity to form a plan of departure. One note in the project seepage margins, in that second hand, read, "Subject continues to perform conditioned tasks above 70% saturation." I've thought about that sentence quite a bit. I went to my truck on day 11. The battery was dead. The tank was empty, though I'd filled it in Newland before driving up. I stood there for a while with my hand on the door handle, looking back at the mounds, at the slow blue smoke. Then I went back inside. By day 11, the feelings that involve urgency had become very difficult to find. There are headlights on the ridge, 2 of them, very white, very steady, moving at the pace of a vehicle that is not hurrying. I can hear the engine now, that diesel idle of a Forest Service truck, patient and certain. I know what will happen. 2 men will get out, standard field clothes, indistinguishable from any other forestry personnel. They will carry clipboards. They will walk the mounds, and then one of them will come to the shed. It's in the logbook. The procedure for a tender reaching saturation status. The paperwork is called Form 7C, described only as Integration Intake Documentation. That word, integration, does all the work while giving you nothing to hold. I want to tell you what I feel right now, because I think it's the only useful thing I have left. I feel quiet, the way the hollow feels at 4 in the morning when the fog has settled and the mounds are all running blue smoke, and the creek has dropped to something you can barely separate from silence. I feel like wood in the middle stage, the water gone, the lighter things gone, just the carbon structure remaining, dense and patient, ready to become something it did not start out as. If someone finds this, I set it to upload on a timed delay because I still had that much sequence left in me. I want to tell you 3 things. First, Ash Hollow is in Avery County, off Route 421. There is a cairn of church stones at the Fire Road turnoff. Someone places that cairn and someone maintains it. Do not go there. The hollow collects. That is what it is for. Second, if you tend any slow fire in a mountain basin with a limestone wall, and the smoke carries something almost sweet, almost metallic, something you keep almost catching and then losing, leave before the stillness starts to feel like home, before the 4-hour rounds feel like the natural rhythm of a day. Comfortable is how it begins. Third, the stump men. I know what they are now. The breath of the marrow at concentration sufficient for cellular conversion does not complete rapidly. There is a middle stage, and during the middle stage what remains is oriented toward heat, toward the mounds, the way a compass responds to a field, not by choice, but because it has been made into something that responds. They are not standing in the smoke. They are standing in the warmth, near the mounds they once tended, in the hollow where the temperature is right. And they have not gone anywhere because they have been made into the kind of thing that stays. There are 6 mounds in the hollow tonight. Come morning there will still be 6. But mound 3 will be slightly larger than it was. Get some sleep. The fires are all tended. And if you smell something sweet in a mountain hollow, something you almost catch and then lose, don't breathe deep. Don't breathe deep.